Good afternoon, folks. You cannot possibly understand how excited I'm about this. Our first Battlefield live stream of 2021 using our new StreamYard uploading system, which is much better than Zoom. And we have an amazing 6 cameras out in the Netherlands and Germany for you today to cover Operation Veritable. But none of this show would be possible without the incredible help of Edwin and Joris and their amazing team of people who are going out Saturday afternoon for us to do all this. So we are going to be talking about the major offensive that began on February the 8th, 1945, Operation Veritable, towards Germany through the Reichswald forest. But the historian today, the lead historian, is Edwin Popken, whose details are in the description below. And I'm going to hand over to him very, very shortly. We have, as I say, 6 cameras out there at the sites. So you don't want to see my ugly mug. We'll put it on what we're looking at. So we're going to start off. That's one of our cameras there. That is Bert's camera, and that is a monument looking at the start line of Operation Veritable. But I'm going to hand over now to Edwin. Good afternoon, Edwin. How are you? Are you there, Edwin? Right. Lost Edwin's audio temporarily, possibly. Can you hear me, Edwin? Edwin. Seems to have been Edwin's audio was working perfectly a minute or two ago. Now it seems to not be working. Edwin, can you hear me? Hello, Edwin. Well, it was a good start. Someone speak to me. Joris, can you hear me?
Hello, Paul. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I've got no Edwin at the moment for some reason.
Is
there?
Video still there?
Video's still there, yeah, but no audio. Up, he's dropped out. Anyway, Joris, just briefly explain why we get Edwin back. Where are you guys out today? How many different locations are you going to be covering?
We're actually quite a lot. So every cameraman has 2 or 3 locations to visit. All of us are located on the border of Germany and the Netherlands, behind the Dutch town of Nijmegen. And in front of us all is the Reichswald forest, the very feared forest on the border of Germany and the Netherlands. And originally, Operation the idea was to go around this obstacle, cross the Hazel River, and then head into Germany. But of course, things didn't went as well as planned. So now the next best thing would be to go straight through the forest, clear the western bank of the Rhine River, and then cross the Rhine River into Germany proper. So this is all the prelude to crossing the Rhine and finishing off Germany.
Right, well, I think we've got Edwin back now. Can you hear me, Edwin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you now. Phil, that's good. That was I aged Brilliant. 5 years in those 5 minutes, Edwin.
Brilliant. This is just Murphy's Law, right? So whatever can go wrong will go wrong, obviously. But I'm glad to be back and you can hear me. So yes, we are at the Reichswald forest today, and if we can just see on one of the cameras, just in the far distance, it's the Reichswald. And as I just picked up, as I re-entered the live stream, Joris was just explaining that basically Operation Veritable was a prelude to the actual crossing of the Rhine, the end of March 1945 in Operation Plunder and Varsity. So, yeah, thank you, Paul, for popping that up. Because actually, Operation Veritable was one of 2 operations which were carried out in conjunction with each other. The northern part, on command of the 1st Canadian Army, was Operation Veritable, the push through the Reichswald, while the Americans from the area east of Aachen were crossing the Ruhr at near Düren and Jülich. and would push off northeast to also basically get the Germans in a pincher movement with the aim of destroying all the German army west of the River Rhine in that area. By destroying it, because simply said, pushing them back over the Rhine would only increase the problem of crossing the Rhine later on. So the aim of the entire operation, the entire operation, is to crush the German army west of the River Rhine as much as possible. And because of this, Montgomery was given US 9th Army under his commands to carry out this operation. Now, the Americans would not start until a couple of days later as planned. However, as things turned out, the Americans could not launch the operation for 2 weeks after it was the planned date, because the Germans blew up the Ruhr River in the Hürtgen forest, which caused a massive flooding of the Ruhr River, making it impossible for the Americans to start their operations until 2 weeks after the date that they meant to go. This meant that the Germans in the area, in the south, could be quickly brought up to the north to face Canadian First Army. And we're talking about Canadian First Army because they ran the show, General Crerar, and you might have a picture of him there somewhere, Paul. General Crerar had under command not just he ran the operation, and he had under his command several corps, under which British 30 Corps led by General Horrocks, Sir Brian Horrocks, who we can see on the right hand side. So while a British Corps commander was in control, at least at the start of the operation, the entire operation was under control of 1st Canadian Army. And this was a first for the Canadians. The Canadian Army had never led such a massive battle. And it was basically, I always say to people, it's a little bit, let's say, the coming of age of the Canadian Army. They performed extremely well in Normandy and clearing up the North Sea coast and Scheldt estuary. And they give a great account of themselves, though not maybe the most well-known battles. They were extremely important battles which they fought, especially after Normandy. And even General Horrocks said when he was working with the Canadians, preparing Operation Veritable, that he found them very experienced and very professional. So that's quite a good compliment, I think, coming from one of the most well-known, most experienced, and most professional British generals during World War II, Sir Brian Horrocks. And just to give you a little bit of idea of how massive this entire operation is, I'm just going to run through a couple of numbers to kick this off. And just a couple of statistics there. So while this operation started on the 8th of February 1945 with 5 attacking divisions and 1 armored division, the 79th in support, and also a couple of armored brigades, at its height, at its peak, Operation Veritable and its runner-up Operation Blockbuster, as the second phase was going to be called later on. At its peak, the entire operation under Canadian command comprised about 450,000 men. That's almost 500,000. 13 divisions and 4 independent armored brigades would be involved in the end of Operation Veritable / Blockbuster. 35,000 vehicles would be involved, amongst which were 3,400 tanks. They would deploy over 10,000 smoke generators to cover the northern bank of the River Rhine, so that the Germans north of the Rhine could not see what was going on this side and interfere. Almost 1,900 tons of bridging equipment was brought in. 4 extra bridges were built across the River Meuse in the rear to make sure that all the supplies could be brought forward. Hundreds of trains and vehicles were needed for this transport, which meant that no less than 9 railheads were put to use, and 4 new railheads were being built to support this operation. 82, no less than 82 engineer companies were full-time employed for road maintenance and building over 100 miles of new roads just to support this operation. We're talking about 750,000 maps for the troops, 500,000 aerial photographs that will be used. Each artillery unit, or each artillery gun, there were 1,034 guns in the area, which was the largest congregation, so to speak, of artillery on the Western Front up till that date. 1,034 artillery guns. They would be they would be firing during the first 4 days of the offensive the equivalent of a bomb drop of 25,000 medium bombers. Just think about it. It's absolutely massive. The daily maintenance requirements were over 7,000 tons. And those are just a few specific statistics. Just a little bit of an idea of the size of all it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, Edwin, just to interrupt you for a second, I'm just going to ask you to drop once out. Just try dropping out the discussion again, dropping it back in. Your audio's not perfect. Just might cure it. I'll carry on talking for a minute or two. Just try dropping out. We'll see if we can make it a bit better.
Okay, will do.
So while Edwin is we're trying to bring the audio issues. His audio was perfect, then it dropped out again. Now, I mean, I as a Brit living in Normandy, we've talked about this on other World War II TV shows. It seems we talk so much about certain operations and others don't get talked about. We talk about the Ardennes offensive. We talk about what was happening in the crossing of the Rhine in March 1945. But Veritable to me seems to be one of those ones we don't talk about anything like enough. And the enormity of it, the fact we're bringing you 6 cameras to try and even just show you the start line is something. And Edwin's statistics there just absolutely amazing. So hopefully bringing Edwin back in again now might just have cured that audio issue. This is the issue. We're doing things live via 6 cameras, 3 different countries. 3 different countries. Right. Have a speak now, Edwin. See if it's any better.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
That's better. Perfect. That's better.
That's better. It might have something to do with the radio reception here. We're being just close to the border. So I hope it keeps up at this point in time. So let's just carry on. So I was just about to say that it's not just the army that's involved, it's also the Air Force. 2nd Tactical Air Force was involved, and British Bomber Command. The night before the week leading up to Veritable, the enemy rear was heavily bombed, and also the night before, several German cities, amongst with Cleve, just at the opposite side of the Reichswald, was very heavily bombed to prevent German reinforcements of coming in before the British and the Canadians could push through the Siegfried Line in this area. At this point, Paul, we might just want to pop up that picture you just showed. Yes, because actually we're talking about this area. So we are a little bit in the bottom or the upper left corner, which is the Groesbeek Heights, and just in front of it you see the first line of the Siegfried Line defenses in this area, while the 2nd defense line runs right through the Siegfried Line, all the way back, right through the Reichswald, all the way back to the south, and there was a 3rd line of defense a couple of miles to the east, and you can just see it, the double line all the way on the right hand side of that map, and that's the Hochwald layback, called by the Germans the von Schlieffen line, after the very famous German general who came up with the invasion plan of France that he used in 1914. Canadians and British called it the Hochwald layback because of that little forest that's in the area. It's called the Hochwald. So 3 lines of defenses, some of these lines were about 2,000 yards in depth, and it was not just these lines which were basically you were looking at a World War kind of environment. We're talking about trench lines, anti-tank ditches, minefields, barbed wire, pillboxes at certain places, though there were not a fat lot of concrete pillboxes in the area, but there were some. But also, most of the houses, when you got into Germany, most of the houses and farmhouses were very heavily fortified by the Germans. Each and every town in Germany, so we're talking about towns like Cleve, Goch, Udem, Xanten, Sonsbach, they were heavily fortified by the Germans, making them basically strongholds or redoubts on their own, in their own right. And through this area, 20 kilometers towards the Rhine near Wesel, the British and the Canadians had to fight. So it really was a daunting task to begin with. So the Air Force was involved, the Army was involved, and to start this operation off at 5 a.m. on the morning of 8th of February 1945, a massive artillery barrage was started, which would be the largest artillery barrage on the Western Front during World War II up till that date. I already said they had about 1,034 artillery pieces, but it was not just the artillery that kicked in. They also used tanks, anti-tank guns, mortars, and what have you to fire at the Germans and the German lines and the German strong points. A known German position. They had an enormous amount of intelligence to work with, and to lay that artillery barrage onto the Germans for about 5.5 hours, not straight. There were some pauses in there to try to lure out the Germans, but also to hear and to sound range or flash range German batteries, so they could counter battery fire. But in all, around 1,800 guns of all sorts, including those mortars and what have you, were involved in that opening barrage. And Paul, let me just say a little bit about what that means. And I'd like to make a comparison here for a minute with the incredible large, even huge artillery barrages of World War One. Most of the people watching this will also have an interest probably in World War One, or would know a little bit about it. So we're talking about 1,850 guns here, right? Firing. Just to give you some comparison, at some they had 1,373 or so. So there are more artillery guns here than there were on the Somme. There were less though than there were at Ypres, at Messines, and at Arras. If you look at what you might say the spacing of the guns or the density of the artillery barrage, so if we look at how many guns per 100 yards those battles would field, and you would look at the artillery barrages at Arras, at Messines, and at Ypres, they range between 13 and 22 artillery guns per 100 yards. And if you talk about Operation Veritable, it's right there. It's right there with these big artillery barrages of World War One. We're talking about spacing these things out no less than 17 guns per 100 yards. So I just hope that this little bit of statistics and comparison just gives you a little bit of idea of the massiveness and the violence that truly rocked this place. And it did. It truly rocked it. We have several eyewitness accounts of people who saw that barrage, and even when they were still a little bit further back in the rear, they felt it. They really felt the ground tremble. So it was, by all accounts, it was absolutely massive.
Yeah. I mean, this is the point of the war, just to interrupt now, where we have so much of everything. This is not 42, 43 where we're struggling. We now have lots of artillery pieces. We have lots of vehicles. We have lots of transport, lots of tanks. Not so much in the way of men. We're running out of men a bit, but we have got lots and lots of steel. And this is, as you say there, Edwin, possibly the Allied army and the ETO's biggest display of firepower, certainly since Normandy.
Oh, absolutely! I absolutely agree, Paul. I absolutely agree. Yes, indeed, they had a lot of firepower, a lot of vehicles, a lot of technology. They were very short on man, both the Canadians and the British at this stage in the war. But what we also, I think, must not leave out is that by this stage of the war, the British and the Canadians, as well as the Americans on their side, right, on their part of the front line, a little bit further to the south, the Allied armies had truly, I think by this stage in the war, mastered the tactics to use that technology in an efficient way. So let's say the level of professionalism in the Allied armies was incredibly high at this point.
Yeah.
Just going to let that tractor pass by because it's making a little bit of noise. I don't know if it interrupts my speaking to you. So it's already gone. So anyways, it's also about professionalism. One thing the British and the Canadians were very aware of is how to use that technology. And they had developed over the months before and during training and during practice sessions, figured out how to employ that technology that they now had. So, for instance, very simple example. Just one brief example. We were looking later on at 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, who attacked over the floodplains in buffaloes. So how to do waterborne operations. They had experienced that. They knew how to use those buffaloes, especially 3rd Canadian Infantry Division had experience with that. And I think for one that they deliberately chose 3rd Canadian Infantry Division to do that operation because of their experience, because they mastered the art of doing waterborne attacks. So it's a truly professional army by this stage of the war, even though it's still, it's a people's army, right? It's made up almost entirely out of conscripts. So yeah. So I think at this stage we wanted to start talking a little bit about what actually happened during that day, and to do that we decided that it would be best that we just talk about the several subsequent divisions that started attacking in the area, and basically follow more or less follow several of those divisions as they are starting during the first 24 hours of this operation. So what we're going to do in the next hour or so, we will be first discussing about the attack of 2nd Canadian Infantry Division. So basically, we're moving a little bit north-south, but we'll just skip 3rd Canadian Infantry Division for the moment because their attack did not start until 6 p.m. that evening. So we start off with the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division, which was a little bit in the north, and I think you have quite a detailed map. I gave you, Paul, with their attack on Wheeler. We're now, okay, I'm seeing that you're going through the picture. Yes, and that's an aerial picture of Wheeler in 1944. And if we just switch to my camera here, I am now looking towards Wheeler, and you just can't see it. Maybe just in the back, all the way in the back there, you can see a church steeple just across the hill, and that's the church steeple of Wheeler. So why would I be here? Because this is the route of attack of the Canadians. Not all of the Canadians, just one battalion, Calgary Highlanders, who would lead that attack or do that attack on Wheeler, but they would do that they would penetrate Wheeler, not directly, but coming from the rear. And to do that, they started off in the tree line a little bit halfway these fields in the back, come through these fields, left and right of this road, and start approaching in southerly direction. Again, Wheeler is over there. And as they are coming back, they will make a giant U-turn and start attacking Wheeler from the rear. Now, why would they do it? Because Wheeler was one of the central German defensive positions in this area, which was actually a part of a triangular division of 3 strong points or 3 redoubts, you might call them even. Though, yeah, well, you know, just let's use the word strong point here because, in my view, redoubt a little bit more requirements to it, probably. But they were very heavily fortified. So it would be a daunting task, the Canadians thought, to start attacking them from the front or from the flank. So they decided, why not come in from the rear? So at 10:30 a.m. on the morning of 8th of February, Calgary Highlanders, they started moving off. And I'm now basically walking in footsteps here in this part of the Calgary Highlanders. And they would not be off on this road. You would have A company on the right-hand side of the road and D company on the left, followed by C company on the left. And they would be starting attacking down this road here, all the way towards those farmhouses just over there, which is called Vossendaal. And that was also a German strong point. Wheeler is coming, the outskirts of Wheeler coming up just on my left-hand side. But that was also a German strong point. And as the Canadians are approaching this, especially A company on the right-hand side of the road, they got a little bit closer to Vossendaal into a minefield that they didn't know about, or they missed somehow. And the Canadians already started suffering quite heavy field and also subjected by some machine gun fire coming from the farmhouses up ahead, which was the German strong point. So what actually happened is that one of the sergeants in A company in the lead platoon, Sergeant McMahon, he navigated himself through that minefield, start attacking Vossendaal on its own, getting into one of the buildings, clearing out the machine gun nest, and taking 22, single-handedly taking 22 Germans and an officer prisoner. That's quite a feat.
Certainly
you know,
is.
and we started starting. Now, McMahon was a little bit concerned because he thought, you know, that German officer might cause a stir because he was just on his own. So he thought, I have to think about a little trick or something like that to make sure that these Germans will not start to attack me. So basically, he walked forward to the officer and basically punched him right in the face, knocking him out. And that subdued the other Germans as well. So
wow.
It wouldn't surprise you that McMahon received a military medal for his action. And his is just one of few actions that happened that day with the Calgary Highlanders that earned several Calgary Highlanders military crosses, military medals, DSMs, DSOs of sorts. So even so, entire Vossendaal was not yet taken. So A company swung around a little bit to the right of it. D company came in and they start to navigate to the left. And after D company, behind D company, C company came up. And as C company came up via these fields just here towards Vossendaal, a little bit past Vossendaal, they make the left-hand turn already and started to going into the direction of that. Well, roughly we think, because we don't really have incredibly exact locations in terms of map references and what have you, but we think that they started to go towards those buildings over there, basically in a large U-turn, and started attacking there. And if all is well, then Paul, not you, Paul, but the Dutch Paul, the cameraman, is just near that location. So he's now, he's now panning towards the general area where C company of the Calgary Highlanders were. And Paul is just picking it up now, and he is starting to walk into the direction, basically in the direction to where C Company was going. Now, as they are getting into that area, they're getting submitted to very heavy fire. Major Campbell, he was killed, they say, by a sniper. But as we know, Paul, everybody could be a sniper, according to soldiers. So anyway, he was killed by receiving a head wound, killed instantaneously. And Lieutenant Ford, one of the platoon commanders, took over, and he started clearing those buildings just as Paul, the cameraman, is passing, and clearing those buildings out. Now, at the same time, D Company made even a more circuitous route, and they came up a little bit on the right, and it was meant that both D and C Company would basically turn back a little bit west, in westerly direction, and going for the village center of Wheeler towards the church. Right, so Paul is now panning into the direction of Kranenburg and in the direction of Cleve, and he is now thinking, I'm thinking he's now going a little bit further west. Yeah, so that's the general direction where C Company was. So which would be on the map just a little bit, just a little bit where you are watching now. Yeah. And if you can see on this aerial photograph, there is a small tree-lined lane going from southwest to northeast a little bit. Yeah. This is where D Company ended up, being in some sort of a sunken lane, and they couldn't get across it because the Germans were pouring withering fire on them. C Company, a little bit to their left, at the fork in the road, was also pinned down. And C Company had received so many casualties by then that not only B Company was sent forward, but B Company actually came forward in under command of Lieutenant Colonel Ellis, the battalion commander personally. And Ellis came into the area, took stock of what was going on, and saw that he had to interfere personally and immediately with the entire action. To make a long story short, because we have a lot of stories to cover today, and we just have so many time in this broadcast, of course. What actually happened is that C Company, especially a sergeant called Melnichenko, he started clearing out several houses. He took out several machine guns personally. Also got either a DSM or a military medal for his actions. And with clearing out these buildings, they had regained a new start line for B Company and D Company on the right to go into Wheeler proper. And also Ellis had arranged for a new artillery barrage to cover the advance into Wheeler. It was planned that Wheeler would have been secured by the Canadians at 4 o'clock in that afternoon. But by 6 o'clock, the Canadians were still fighting in this area. And it took until about, I think off the top of my head, about 7 p.m. until most of the Germans were subdued. And even the next day, they still found Germans in that area who were hiding. In total, the Calgary Highlanders that day captured about, well, the numbers differ a little bit depending on which account you read, of course, but between the 280 and 320 German prisoners. So basically, they took an entire battalion prisoner there. That's what they said, including, I think, the battalion commander was also captured there. Canadians themselves, the Calgary Highlanders, they suffered, I think, 13 men dead and about 62 wounded. So that was quite a fight, as you might say.
Yeah.
So.
And it's the extraordinary stuff. Everything's working really well. Your audio is still not 100% perfect, but we're understanding it. People are enjoying watching it. And again, folks, this is all. We are exclusively bringing you this stuff like this live. No one else is being stupid enough to do live battlefield reports. They do it, from offices. We're doing it live on the day. We're gluttons for punishment. And Edwin, you're doing an amazing job. Don't forget, folks, Edwin's doing this in his second language. He's controlling all the camera angles. He's planned all this out in advance. He's coordinating the camera teams. And he's walking. It's an amazing effort. Thank you very much, everybody, for what you're doing.
Oh yeah, but let's not forget about the other blokes in this area, because we couldn't do it with the help of all these of the 5 other guys who are in this area, walking around and showing us very great stuff as we are going. And I can promise you, it's going to be even some of the pictures that we'll be able to show you, some of the video that we'll be able to show you will even be better as we go along. So that will be great. So this, I think, we'll be leaving as 2nd Canadian Infantry Division for now. Like I said, we couldn't talk about the entire action of the Canadians. Just a little bit to the south or to the right-hand flank of the Calgary Highlanders. French Canadians started attacking also through the area. Those were basically the only 2 Canadian battalions of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division attacking in this area. And those, just to mention them and give them due attention, those were the Canadians of the what they call again, Le Régiment de Maisonneuve.
Yep.
So, but we, just because we can just do so much, and also little, I should say, it's such a tremendously large battle. We just focus on just several accounts. And hope that
the main thing we're doing is we're giving people an idea of the terrain, isn't it? People can carry on and read about this once this live stream is over.
Absolutely.
What we're doing is there are people watching this in Canada and the USA. Dave's watching in near Gettysburg. There's nothing like seeing the ground for yourself. And sure, the people watching this aren't actually there, but these images are showing us the openness. They're showing us the forests in the background. We had Rolls showing us the trenches and foxholes in the forest. It's amazing stuff, guys. Just we're very impressed.
Great. Absolutely. So okay, thank you, Paul. So I think we now speed towards the 15th Scottish Division, and I think that would mean that we start off with camera position where Bert is now at.
Yep.
So if you could just switch to Bert.
We've been on Bert for a few seconds. I'm ahead of you, Edwin.
Okay. So that, I think Bert already started walking before we got to this bit, and we're going to show this picture a little bit later on because this is where yours is. So, but we start with Bert. 15th Scottish Division. They started the attack on the two brigade front, 227 and 46 Brigade, and 15th Scottish Division had one of the most important tasks during the opening of Operation Veritable, because one of the things that to get to Cleves as quickly as possible, which was vital before the Germans could get to Cleves and take the high ground a little bit outside Cleves. The British and the Canadians had to get there, which meant that they had to pierce through the main section of the Siegfried Line on the northern tip as quickly as possible. And to do this, we're going back to, what I always say, the level of professionalism that they mastered at this point in the war. 15th Scottish Division had experience with a new technique using all armored vehicles, including armored personnel vehicles, the first evolution of armored personnel vehicles as we know them today, which are kangaroos. Kangaroos, for the people who don't know anything about what these are, other than, just cute little animals that live in Australia. Kangaroos basically was a code name for Canadian ram tanks, and a ram tank is a Canadian version of Sherman tank, so you have a little bit of an idea on what it looks like. They were basically Canadian ram tanks that weren't used anymore. They took off the turret, cleaned out the interior, equipped it with the 50 caliber machine gun, American 50 caliber machine gun, and what they could do, they could get infantry in them. That means that they could get infantry over rough terrain with tracked vehicles being protected by armor. Hence, first generation of armored personnel vehicles as we know them today. Unlike today, people would not get out and in via the back. They would have to get in and out via the top, via where there used to be a gun turret. So that was the hazard part of things. But still, you know, it was quite usable. And 15 Canadian Infantry Division had experience with using kangaroos and all sorts of specialized armored vehicles from 79th Armored Division. So we're talking about flail tanks. We're talking about the specialized Averys and swords, and use those things in conjunction with each other and the artillery to form what they dubbed an armored breaching force. And during the planning stage of Operation Veritable, it apparently has been decided that the armored breaching force would also be used to pierce through the Siegfried Line. That means that 15 Canadian Division has an important, maybe the most important job of the day. You know, notwithstanding that the other guys, other units also had incredibly important jobs, of course, during that day. But it was a truly essential job to get through that Siegfried Line as quickly as possible, to get other units to, into Cleve and onto the Matterborn heights near Cleves as quickly as possible before the German reinforcements could be brought in. So that meant that the 15th Scottish Division was attacking the armored breaching force, which was basically 44th Brigade. They were held in reserve at first. So that meant that on the 2 brigade front, 227 and 46th Brigade would be advancing. And they would be advancing towards the northern tip of the Reichswald and to the German village called Kranenburg. And if we just switch to Bert back again, is that Bert's video again? Yeah. Bert is basically looking across the fields where 227 Infantry Brigade, led by the 2nd Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, attacked over towards Germany, towards the northern tip of the Reichswald, which you can, I think, just see barely in the distance. So that's quite distance they had to cover. And the Argylls, together with the other battalions of 227 Infantry Brigade, they would be attacking, in the end, Kranenburg, which is a little bit on the left-hand side, far in the distance. And I think Bert being where he is, you can't see the church steeple of Kranenburg from there, unfortunately. But it's a little bit on the left-hand side in the distance. The 27th Brigade did not do it alone. They were also supported by one of the independent battalions, or one of the battalions of the Dutch Independent Armored Brigade, which they cooperated with on several occasions. So also on this occasion, and of course going through these fields, going through the minefields of the Germans, they also used the specialized armored vehicles of 79th Infantry or Armored Brigade, sorry. So the flail tanks and that sort of thingies. Having said that, the major problem that the British encountered in this area, and it's not just in this area, this is basically the same thing everywhere we look on the first day of Operation Veritable. The main opponent that the British and the Canadians are facing, but especially the British moving forward towards the Reichswald, is not the Germans at this stage. The main opponent that they have to combat at this point in time is mines and mud. Because a day before Operation Veritable, a couple of days before Operation Veritable started, on the night of 30th, on the 31st of January 1945, a thaw set in, making the entire area very heavily saturated Am I still there?
You're still there? Yep.
Okay, because for some reason I lost. Oh no, there it is. Sorry about this. It's not just that it thawed. Also, on the night before the attack, it started raining very heavily. So that means that a already saturated ground was now completely and truly covered in quagmire. Which means as these troops, and especially as all these vehicles are passing through, all these tanks, all these Averys, all these flail tanks, all these bridge relaying vehicles.
Yep.
It's getting worse and worse. So that means things are going very slow. Things are going very much difficulty. Tanks and other vehicles get stuck in the mud, and basically in the end it's mostly infantry pushing forward, supported by artillery barrages, and tanks basically lagging behind and trying to keep up with the infantry as much as possible.
And this is
one of the
just to interrupt, let you have a break for a couple of seconds. But in my prep for this, of course, in some ways it's counterintuitive. But the British and the Canadians actually planned to do this when it was still frozen. Their belief was to move across the ground would be easier when it was frozen, which I say sounds a bit counterintuitive. But actually, as you said, that it was the thaw that was the big problem, because the snow and ice just turned to mud, and then the floods, and that's the thing they had to contend with more than anything else was logistics and then roads later on, because of the fields are so muddy, the fields are underwater, so it all becomes about the terrain, which is why, again, showing people the terrain is so important, because you've got to imagine this with all that mud, with all that water underfoot, and you can see how low lying the area there are, and you imagine once that water sits there, it's just going to turn it into a disastrous situation to move.
Absolutely, and I think Joris is now just about to come up, if he's not there already, to one of the lanes. Yes, Joris, if you would please stop over there, if you can hear us for a second. He is following basically in the route of 46th Brigade and one of the other battalions in Guards Armoured Division, or Guards Armoured Brigade, Independence Guard Armoured Brigade. And that road used to be a dirt road. And one of the pictures I sent you the other day, Paul, actually was taken where Joris is at now. Just a little bit further back, actually, where Joris is now, but it doesn't really matter. But this picture is taken as the infantry of 46th Infantry Brigade is marching up that road towards Germany, and this is literally on the Dutch-German border where this picture is taken. So we're looking into the Netherlands towards Nijmegen, and they're walking past this camera into Germany as this picture was taken. And this picture says it all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. It just look, and you also have pictures that a tank passes by, but I particularly like the pictures showing the infantry, because it really shows you how deep that mud already is. Right? If you just look at the infantryman, it's up to their shins.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to keep on those tracks, because as soon as they get off track there, it's at least they're going to lose a boot. This is where the picture was taken. Joris is now almost at the exact right spot, and he's looking the right direction. So now we almost got a then and now kind of situation.
Amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and look how good the road is nowadays. So it's hard surface, but it's one of these things. And the thing with this road is, that if it was just one brigade that's coming through, right? So for those of you less familiar with sizes of units, a British infantry brigade during World War II was comprised of 3 battalions, and a battalion was about between, let's say, roughly 800 and 850 officers and men, very roughly, right? So let's just say 800 to 900, just for the sake of it, to make a little bit more to understanding arithmetic. So you need 3 times 8, you've already got 2,400, right? 3 times 9, you've got 2,700. So with supporting brigades units, you're talking around the 3,000 men that passing by, including their vehicles. Then you've got the engineers passing by in their vehicles, you know, the flails, the AVs, and what have you. You've got the battalion, the guards armored battalion that's supporting, passing by. So you can easily see that there's a lot of traffic just on that very small road. You know, it's just incredible. But the thing is, Paul, the thing is with this particular road, that it's not just one brigade that passes this, because this is also the route that 44th Brigade was supposed to be using to come up to go forward to their forming up point later that day, to breach the main line of the Siegfried Line later that day, the armored breaching force. And just to let you know, armored breaching force consisted of no less than 300 vehicles.
Yeah, wow.
So
I'll put the map up again there, because you can see on that map just how condensed that front is. You know, you're trying to put everything in a very narrow space. The scale on that map, folks, is where the scale there at the bottom. So one kilometre is that. So yeah, this all you know, 2 divisions trying to move in an area just really a few hundred yards wide.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. You know, just to make some comparisons, also again for the viewers who are less familiar with this battle, with this terrain here, and I think most people would be very well acquainted with Normandy, and especially you, Paul, of course. So Normandy, the frontage from Gold's Beach to Utah Beach, how many kilometers are we talking about? How wide?
Yes, 70 or 80 kilometers in. Yeah.
Okay, and we have about also 5 divisions attacking there.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
5 or 6 divisions. So we took and on 75 kilometers, 5 or 6 divisions attacking on D-Day. Right here, we have 5 divisions attacking on a frontage of just 10 kilometers. Yeah. So it
wouldn't have been ideal if the terrain hadn't been all underwater. If it had been perfect conditions, it's still a very narrow front. But with all the flooding and the mud and and of course, as we haven't really established a very stubborn German defender as well. So what's yours pointing at there?
There are some bullet holes in this building.
Good. So show us the bullet holes.
To see, but there are some lighter spots in the middle.
I think it's a little bit difficult, Joris, to see from this distance. Can you get a little bit closer, or is that impossible for you?
No, don't get yourself arrested, Joris. We can imagine it. We know what bullet holes look like.
Yeah, we'll see some more damage later on. So So 15th Scottish Division is pushing through, getting to Kranenburg and getting to a place called Alpdamheuvel on the hill. And that would be the 46th Brigade, which is going there. The Cameronians would capture that piece of hill, which would be the former position of 44th Brigade later on for the attack on the main part of the Siegfried Line in that area. All right, so and we'll be coming back later on to just talk a little bit and show you where that main attack on the Siegfried Line, on the main part of the Siegfried Line, also called the HKL by the Germans, Hauptkampflinie, the main line of resistance, I think you would call it in English, used to be. So it's still, at current, we're still talking about the forward positions that they're piercing through, right? Taking Germans prisoner. There is some German resistance, not very much in this area, but there is some German resistance. And most Germans, they just give themselves up, or they just find it somewhere, still completely dazed and shaken by that artillery barrage, which was lifting just in front of the infantry as the infantry is moving forward. So also the technique of creeping barrages, it's used to great effect in this area, in this operation. So at this point in time, I think we've covered a little bit about the 15 Scottish Division as they were moving through the terrain. We saw a little bit about where 227 went through the fields. We saw here where 46 Brigade went through, went along this road into Germany, and Joris is now walking in that direction. I think he's almost looking literally into Germany. He will be passing into Germany in about 100 yards from here. But we'll just leave it off here, and I think we now switch over to the southern end of the attack, which is where 51st Highland Division came in. And I think we start off with Mike, and Mike is just a little bit outside Bredeweg, which is the one of the main routes of attack into towards the Reichswald by 51st Highland Division, and they also attacked on a one brigade front because of the total narrow frontage. They had to attack just on a one brigade front. It's actually well, that arrow is has to be a little bit more to the north. Actually, this is a post-war map, but it's they came in a little bit more to the north. And actually, they did that. Basically, they did the same thing as the Canadian 2nd Division did, but on a grander scale. They knew that on the southern side, if you just go back to that map a little bit, Paul, please. So in the middle, we see the Reichswald. But on the western side of the Reichswald, we just see a tip going a little bit across. Actually, there's a road in between, but you can't see it on this map, of course. And it's just a small patch of woods on the left-hand side of the on the left-hand side of the Reichswald, left-hand side, where the area is, what you talked about. Yes, that one. Yeah. So there was a lot of Germans in that area, and specifically also just a little bit outside the Reichswald, which means that the 15 Highland Division came in a little bit north from there, gained the Reichswald, and just did a giant U-turn and basically wheeled back clockwise and started also attacking the Germans on the left-hand side of the Reichswald from the rear again. So basically they did the same thing as the Canadians, but on a grander scale, because they were not attacking with 2 battalions, they were attacking with several brigades, though one after another, so passing through each other. So starting this attack was 154 Brigade. They were reinforced by the 5 and 7 Gordons, which was actually serving in another brigade. But just before the opening attack, they were basically beefed up a little bit. So from normal 3 battalions to 4 battalions. And they would be starting attacking two battalions abreast. And where Mike is now standing, this is the route of attack, which was followed pretty much by the 7 Black Watch as they were passing through. And I'm just trying to look over here and trying to see where Mike is stationed right now. Mike, could you just pan around a little bit for me, please? And I think Mike's now looking north, isn't he? Aren't you, Mike? You're now looking north. And just, yeah, that's the direction that the Black Watch was coming from. And followed by the 5 and 7 Gordons in their wake. Part of the Black Watch took a left-hand turn at these crossroads and took a right-hand turn to come onto a parallel road a little bit further, where that white house is in the right-hand side behind those trees, followed by the 5 and 7 Gordons. But the balance of the 7 Black Watch basically just walked down this road. And I hope that Mike, can you put your camera a little bit more to the south, please, and look down the road to the south. And that's where the Black Watch was going towards this, towards the village proper of Bredeweg, towards the church at the end of the street. Now, as the Black Watch is coming here, they already bump into several Germans, and they get into, in several places, they get into quite a stiff firefight. And the story is that the Black Watch is actually quite surprised, because they find a battalion of Germans here, of a regiment and a division that they were not expecting in this area. They were expecting in this area units of the 84th Infantry Division, German 84th Infantry Division, specifically the 1052 Infantry Regiment or Grenadier Regiment, 1052 Grenadier Regiment. But that regiment, just the night before, the battalion of that regiment that was in this area had just been relieved by a battalion of the 1222 Grenadier Regiment of the 180th Infantry Division, which was specifically an infantry division that was actually situated a little bit further to the south along the River Maas and was not in this area. But the German commanders, and we just saw a couple of them, expecting an attack, especially General Straube and Schlem. They were more or less expecting also an advance through the Reichswald, and they started reinforcing here.
Goedemiddag.
Even though
Vind je het goed?
I think somebody got his microphone on.
Sorry, we're back. We're sorted again. Don't worry.
Okay, never mind. So even though the higher-ups, like from Rundstedt, they expected the main assault to come in more to the south, the main British assault to come more to the south, in the area where the 180th Infantry Division was, and not through the Reichswald. Nonetheless, the lower-ranking generals, they felt that the main attack would come through the Reichswald, especially General Schlem of the 1st Paratroop Army, German 1st Paratroop Army, who was responsible for this area. The guy on the left-hand side is this picture taken in Italy a year before. And he specifically felt that the main attack would come through the Reichswald, and he started getting just a couple of extra battalions into the area, or position them a little bit better as a reserve that he could bring up pretty quickly. So one of the things he did again, that he brought up that other regiment, a battalion of another regiment, to put in the line at Bredeweg, where Mike is now, in that area. And this was obviously quite new for the British, as they did not have intelligence that German unit would be there, which caused a little bit of confusion. But the confusion was also for the Germans, because they were still in the process of being relieved, of relieving the other Germans, getting settled, getting acquainted with the area, when Operation Veritable started for them. Just hours, maybe less than an hour, as they arrived in the area. So even though the Germans gave a good account of themselves, and it took the Black Watch, the 7 Black Watch, quite a stiff fight in this area to gain their objectives, amongst which was this area where Mike is now. Now, the 5 and 7 Gordons, as you can also see on this map a little bit, we're talking about 153 Brigade. This map just mentions brigades. We're on the lower arrow of the of 153, or the middle arrow of 153 brigade, or 154 brigade. Sorry, I'm saying 153. I meant 154. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. This is all amazing stuff. Keep going.
154 Brigade, 57 Gordons came through, and they gained an entrance into the Reichswald, which was also used by 153 Brigade, here we go, to start pushing through by the end of the day already. So we're talking about already 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock-ish. When the rest of 153 Brigade came through, they were still fighting Brederweg, so that's the other arrow that doesn't really go exactly to the Reichswald. That's what Mike is. And 153 Brigade, another unit of Black Watch, the 5th Black Watch, is pushing through to gain the heights at the southwestern tip of the Reichswald. So that's the part of the Reichswald, not the part across the road. And as they are doing that, also yet another unit comes through. And if we try to switch cameras and go to the camera of Rule, because Rule should actually be, yes, he is actually in the Reichswald, and what we see here, well, maybe Rule can explain himself a little bit what he's looking at.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Rule, because he's been standing there, waiting patiently for an hour to get his scenes on shot. So thank you very much, mate. We've been appreciating your patience.
Props for him.
Okay, what you see here are the first line of trenches of the Germans who were sitting in the Reichswald. I go over a little bit. They're still visible. Not so very deep at the moment after all those years, but they're still visible in this Reichswald. And those are the first line of defense of the Germans to the Reichswald.
No. And these are part of the trenches that the 5th Black Watch had to overcome as they are attacking up the hill here towards what they call the summit, which was called Pyramid Hill. And this is one of the objectives of the 5th Black Watch on day one. And as they are attacking and securing the Pyramid Hill, and have secured it late in the day, the 1st Gordons pass through. And the 1st Gordons, they are doing the big wheel turn back into the Netherlands, going across the road again to another woods across the roads, and attacking that German position. Or we were talking about attacking them also from the rear. And
I'm just going to show that photo of the forest, because it's just while we've got those shots of the trees, I think it's really good to show that.
Yeah. And here you see a beautiful picture of part of the 51st Highland Division going through those woods on that first day. And that's just incredible. And I think Rule is now walking towards the area where the 5th Black Watch dug in for the night, and we can still see some foxholes there. So I hope we are able to show that a little bit later on again, and also where the 1st Gordons start attacking down the road back into the Netherlands, going all the way. So yes, this is the line, part of the line of advance of the 5th Black Watch at the bottom of the hill, basically going south here. This is quite good stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it is. So in the meantime, if you could just, I don't know if yours is already at its next spot, because then we give by Rule a little bit of time to get to that area. Yours is also in the next spot. So yours is now actually in the area where part of the 53rd Highland, the 53rd Welsh Division. I'm getting a little bit confused here, but bear with me. That's me. Where 53rd Welsh Division passed through. So 53rd Welsh Division was attacking in between the 15th Scottish Division and the 51st Highland Division, coming from Groesbeek, getting a form-up point just a little bit east of Groesbeek, with 1 battalion up, and then that form-up point, which is a little bit in the direction that Joris was just looking at now on camera, They were forming up 2 battalions abreast, the Highland Light Infantry on the south end side, and the Oxford and Buckinghamshire Light Regiment, the Ox and Box, on the right hand side. And Joris is now standing on the route of advance of the Ox and Box as they were coming down that road from the direction that Joris is now looking into and going into the Reichswald, immediately in front of the where Joris is. And I think Joris is now trying to walk a little bit forward for us, because what Joris is now looking at is the Reichswald. And look at this. Look at what Joris is now looking at. This gives you a little bit of an idea of the size of the Reichswald. You know, all the way in the back there, you know, down this road on the left, you would have the 51st Highland Division.
Wow.
If Joris would pan the other way down this road, you see he's going into Germany now.
Be careful, Joris.
Yeah, there might be the Alt Mine. So Joris, could you please pan to the left a little bit? So down the road, okay, all the way to the left there, you have the northern fringes of the Reichswald, and that's where 15th Scottish Division was passing from, basically looking at this from west to right. Great stuff. And of course, the Welsh themselves, they started to enter the Reichswald right where Joris is. At least one of the battalions, the Ox and Box, trying to penetrate into the Reichswald to certain objectives, which were, you know, a couple of 1,000 yards into the forest. We won't be going there today, but this is one of the main routes of advance into the forest. Also used later on by lots of other vehicles, of course, as they were pushing through the Reichswald. Incredible stuff.
And again, I just want to thank all you guys for going out and doing this, because, you know, you're not just doing this show today, you've done all the prep and the reconnaissance for this. And, you know, I can't thank you enough on behalf of the World War II TV audience. This is just amazing to get these live images with trenches and the very roads these heroes went down. It's just amazing stuff.
Thank you. Well, we love doing it. I think we all share the same passion for history here. So, so we just love, you know, that's also, I think, Paul, that's the same reason why you are guiding. We love to share that history. We love to show people the spots where it happened and show the traces that are still visible. Yours is actually looking at some remnants of some German trenches at the entrance of the Reichswald there. Just amazing stuff. You can still see that stuff today here. And just a word of warning, maybe, to some of the audience, because a lot of people, you know, hearing that, you know, there's been a lot of artillery firing here, there's been a lot of fighting here. Actually, this area has been the front line since the start of Operation Veritable. So this has been more or less a static front line for about 5 months. So that means that there's still a lot of ordnance here. The Dutch demolition unit comes around here almost on a daily basis because people find some ordnance, live ordnance, and it would be tempting maybe for some of the viewers to think, oh, this is a great area, let's go around here with a metal detector. Please be careful with it, and do know that as you cross into Germany, it's actually forbidden by law, by criminal law. So in the Netherlands, it's less of a criminal offense, but having said that, it is incredibly dangerous to do so.
Yeah.
So just be careful if you do that. I wouldn't do it at all, but, you know, I'm not going to go and say what other people should or should not be doing, but I would like to give a word of advice here, and, you know, please refrain from it. That's as far as I would go here. So I think we could start switching back to rule now. Or you already did?
There's Rule.
This is Rule?
Yep.
Okay, Rule, where are you at, mate?
Yeah.
I'm in the area where the 5th Black Watch was having their first night. You can see it in the forest over there.
Okay, yeah, so
there are a lot of foxholes here. I'll show you one here.
Look at that.
Yep.
Still remnants of foxholes, and as the Germans were digging proper trenches, it's highly likely that these foxholes were dug by the 5th Black Watch as they were camping out during the first night in this area.
Wow.
And I think you, Roel, you're now walking down to the
entrance.
To the entrance of the forest and to the country lane, which was used by the 1st Gordons as they were attacking towards St. John's Bear.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, oh, that would be also quite nice that we have a little bit of a view as the 1st Gordons are wheeling back from the forest through the lines of the 5th Black Watch and start attacking basically in the rear of those Germans that were still in force there, and just basically up this road here and started attacking west again. Now, as they were doing this, it was already evening, you know. So I think the 1st Gordons attack did not start until about 7 o'clock at night, and they make contact with Canadian forces, would help the front line in front of them now. So they're actually attacking back towards their own front line, and they contacted those Canadians in that area about midnight that night.
Wow.
So 51st Highland Division had quite a busy day that day, and even of course the next day the fight is still going on. But it's quite a fight. So great.
Well, I hope everyone's camera batteries are still okay, because we've been at it an hour and a quarter. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but I'm sitting in office. I hope everyone's battery is going to last out.
Yeah, yeah, mine will. I'm on a external battery. So
oh, good. Well, as long as we got you.
I'm still good for a couple of hours. Okay, so I think at this point in time we'll just switch back because we already covered some of the stuff of you know, 4 of the 5 divisions. That leaves us just with one more division that we have to cover, and that will be the 3rd Canadian Division, which I already mentioned, Paul, started not until 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
Right, and they had quite a daunting task. If you just could bring up that map again that we have been using a couple of times, that would be nice. Okay, yeah. So all the way in the north, you have a couple of lines with, and clearly set on that map, 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. So the thing with the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division is that they would not attack through the Reichswald or towards the Reichswald, but a little bit north of that, between the Reichswald and the River Rhine in the north. And basically, they would be attacking across the floodplains of the River Rhine, which means low-lying land, heavily saturated, even partly flooded already by the Germans. And to make sure that they could get through that area, the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division would start on a 2-brigade wide front in a waterborne attack using buffalo. So that's exactly a picture that was taken during that attack. This picture is from the 9th of February, 1945, as Canadian troops are going through the flooded countryside, as you can see, attacking from village to village, and each village was basically a strong point in its own, some sort of an island, which basically ensure that the Germans couldn't flee, but also ensure that the Germans gave a very good account of themselves as they were attacked, being readouts in their own, more or less. So I think first we are looking here at Paul's camera again. Yes, Paul, is that Neil? And Neil is one of the villages attacked by 3rd Canadian Infantry Division by the Canadian Scottish. Now, the attack of the brigades where Canadian Scottish were part of was not led by the Canadian Scottish, but actually led by the Regina Regiment, the Regina Rifles, sorry. And Regina Rifles they captured a little dam called the Queer Dam and pushed on to another village called Siegfried, just across the border. And as they gained that, the Canadian Scottish, less one company, and we'll get back to that one company later on, started attacking through the night towards Neil itself. In the meantime, the Germans trying to break off this attack, or at least seriously hamper it, they blew up a section of the Rhine dike further back east, causing that this entire area started to become not just slightly flooded, but very heavily flooded. And that's also what you saw in that picture you just showed, Paul.
Yeah.
Even so, you have to imagine that the Canadian Scottish, they started attacking around midnight on the night of the 9th of February 1945 towards Neil. It's pitch dark. There's gun flashes going around, artillery crashes going all places. There's overcast, so there's no moon or hardly any moon. So this, and in this water landscape, in which is basically everything looks the same, the Canadian Scottish have tried to find their way, and actually the attacking battalions of the Canadian Scottish, or the attacking companies, of the Canadian Scottish, are misnavigating, and they find themselves in the wrong village. Now that's in itself already not a very good point. They did not find out, they did not figure out that they were in the wrong village until about 4:30 in the morning. By that time, they still had to go to Neil. And
is he showing us the height of the water there?
Yeah. He's showing how high the water is.
Wow.
So it's basically up to your chest. So, and it's just getting higher. What also happened is that behind the battalions, battalion headquarters came up, and they were going for Neil in a straight line, not knowing that Neil wasn't taken by their battalion, and being caught out by German fire. Even so, just to give this a little bit brief, because we can, there's a lot of action around Neil. Actually, during daybreak, Neil was captured by the Canadian Scottish in the end, capturing about 100 Germans who couldn't flee from Neil because they were stranded as well. And at that point in time, Neil was captured by the Canadians. But as the flood is rising and keeps on rising, the Canadians have to take to the houses, to the upper stories of the houses, to keep their feet dry. And they couldn't get away because those buffaloes, after basically, let's say, beaching the assaulting troops, the buffaloes would go away again, pick up different troops and bring them elsewhere. So that means that the Canadian Scottish were stranded in this village, in this flooded village, for a couple of days before they were relieved by buffaloes. And I think Roel is now walking actually to one of the buildings that you can still show you some war damage. Yeah, that should be there on the. If you look very closely, yeah, you can see the pock marks in that wall over there. All the holes and damage. And that just shows you just a little bit of traces of war that you can still find in this area. Incredible stuff. One funny story I want to share with you about Neil before we start looking at that other company of Canadian Scottish, which was going in a different place. One of the companies, the Canadian Scottish, actually in Neil, they started to raise their flag, their battle flag, in the church tower in Neil. And I think Paul is now just panning towards the church tower. That they're basically signaling not just to the Canadians, but also to the Germans, hey folks, we've got Neil. And that basically invited retaliatory fire by German artillery. So in the end, it was not very sound idea by the Canadians to raise that battle flag. It was just, inviting the Germans to start shelling Neil with a lot of artillery. Still, as a testament to Canadian bravery, or maybe you should call it plain stubbornness, they kept, as far as I know, they kept up that flag and kept basically challenging the Germans to start shelling them in that way.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. Okay, so at this point in time, we will start to go switch cameras to Bert, because Bert is actually a completely different spot. And he is at what we call the Queerdam, which is basically, he's now looking south along the Queerdam, if I'm seeing correctly. And one of the things with the Queerdam was that at its northern end, where Bert now is, there was a German stronghold, which was called by the Canadians, because it was such a stronghold, Little To-Brook. And it was just in this area where we are now. And Queerdam is not a very high dam or a very high dike. It's just as high as you can see it now today, what we're looking at. There's a road passing through here. And that the Little To-Brook, and I've sent you a couple of pictures, Paul. You might want to, if you could just get one, so we can start explaining it a little bit. Yes, just about that. That's Little To-Brook. And Little To-Brook, we're now looking from the western side towards Little To-Brook. And the Queerdam is just going off to the right. You can see a little bit on this picture, and then there's Polderland to the left. But Little To-Brook was exactly in the middle of exactly in between both brigades attacking. Both three attacking brigades of 3rd Canadian Infantry Division.
Yeah.
Meaning that if Little To-Brook was not taken out in the initial stages of the campaign, then the Germans at Little To-Brook could pour fire either down the Queerdam or a little bit to the north, and make life extremely miserable for any troops that try to pass through. And of course, Little To-Brook could also be used as an artillery observation post for the Germans as the Canadians were passing through. So to make sure that the Germans would not be able to, to do those things, Little To-Brook had to be taken out as quickly as possible. And that task was given to B Company of the Canadian Scottish. So B Company did not go to Wheel. They actually started off at the base of the Queerdam and started marching and fighting their way up north, up the Queerdam, along the Queerdam, towards Little To-Brook, trying to take it out. And the Queerdam, literally, it's no more than 3 to 5 meters wide. And you can see here a picture just of January 1945, when there's still snow, and you can see how much has already been shelled.
Yeah.
So from a German perspective, it's not really a nice place to be at that particular time. The farmhouse that you just saw, that Bert was showing, was completely destroyed. There was a pillbox, a general pillbox at the end of the Queerdam, which was very heavily fortified and also covered with several machine guns. And that's the main piece of the Little To-Brook strong point that the Canadians have to neutralize. Now, as they are trying to fight forward on that very small dam, basically one platoon up and just platoons in line, because you just can't van out, because left and right the ground's being flooded, so you can't get through. The Canadians get stuck, and what they do, they bring forward one of the buffaloes and start equipping that buffalo with a lot of Bren guns, a mortar, I think they had on it. The buffalo itself has a 50 cal machine gun on it, and a 20 millimeter gun on it. And basically what they did, they used that buffalo as a floating artillery platform. trying to go a little bit around the Germans and start attacking that pillbox from a different direction, as also Canadian infantry was going through the flooded countryside and started attacking the remnants of that farmhouse and neutralizing that farmhouse, and soon after also attacking and neutralizing the pillbox at Little To-Brook, which used to be a little bit to the left of where the cameras now
Right.
looking. But a pillbox it's not there anymore nowadays. It was just a little bit in that direction that we are now looking at. So it's one of the guys attacking in that area. One of the guys immediately on the front, leading his section, is Sergeant Janicki of the B Company Canadian Scottish. And Sergeant Janicki was one of the first Canadian Scottish, saved from, I think, C Company, but one of the first Canadian Scottish landing on Juni Beach with the second wave on D-Day. And he's one of the first in, and he, moreover, Janicki, at this point in time, in his company, a B Company Canadian Scottish Regiment, is one of the handful of survivors of D-Day still with the company.
Yeah. The turnover of units in 3rd Canadian Division was
just
incredible.
Yeah. And as Janicki is leading his troops and his section, they overcome the German resistance, I think that actually Janicki's vast experience fighting the Germans since D-Day was quite material in that. And as they are rounding up some Germans, it's still pitch dark. It's still in the middle of the night, so you can't see a handful. Janicki is going around Little To-Brook, and then he is caught by some machine gun fire of some Germans that are still out there. And he is, the few that are still left are few because Sergeant Janicki was killed in action during that action that night at Little To-Brook. Bert is now actually looking at the remnants of that farmhouse, basically one of the still remaining parts of the farmhouse, I should say. And looking at that wall, you can also see some repairs of some war damage. It's all been cemented up, but you can still see where the bullet hit. Yeah. Just also, again, as just to give the viewers a little bit of an idea of the incredible ferocity of the fighting here, not just the Canadian, but also the Germans. You have to have a very healthy respect for the Germans that fought here, because they did give a very good account of themselves, even though they were outnumbered, outclassed. The German army was not the German army from 1944 anymore, from June 1944. Basically the war was already all but over, and they were still fighting, and, you have to have a certain amount of a professional respect of, how they did that, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's also getting closer to the homeland, isn't it? They did kind of find that renewed energy when it got close to their borders again, didn't they?
Absolutely, yes, and still,
as I think all of us would naturally. It's a natural thing, isn't it? When the war starts getting towards your homeland, you fight a bit harder.
Yes, absolutely. And this is also what Veritable is about. It's while the Americans were already around Aachen fighting on German soil and in parts of the Ardennes. Right, the British and Canadians were still fighting on Allied soil, on Dutch soil.
Yeah,
and this is actually Operation Veritable, is actually the invasion of Germany by 21st Army Group. Right, this is where it starts. This is where the end of the war starts. For the next couple of months, they will be fighting into Germany, into northwestern Germany. Grant you, the Canadian Army partly goes back into the Netherlands to secure the left flank of the 21st Army Group, but from a 21st Army Group perspective, from Montgomery's perspective, this is the start of the push into Germany, towards the rural industrial area and towards the big harbors like Hamburg and Bremen and the northern German plains, where almost we're talking 8th of February 1945 here. You know, we go March, April, May, less than 3 months from the start of this operation, on the Lunenburg Heath, Montgomery will receive the German surrender of all the German troops in front of his army group. Right? And this is basically where it starts. This is where this final campaign starts.
Well, this is brilliant stuff, Edwin.
Yeah, I think we've got 2 more things to do in this live show. First of all, we want to go back to Joris now, because Joris, by this time, he will be on that hill that the 46th Infantry Brigade of the 15th Scottish has captured. And we actually now look at Joris is in Germany and looking further into Germany down a hill where the main line of resistance of this part of the Siegfried Line, of the most northerly fringe of the Siegfried Line, was at. Even further back, it would go. This road will go directly towards Cleves, but you can't see it from here because there's still some Reichswald in the back, and behind that, that's where you're a little bit on the left-hand side in the back is where Cleves is. So, like I said, 46th Brigade, they gained this high ground here as a form point also for 44th Canadian or 44th Infantry Brigade of 15th Scottish Division, and 44th Infantry Brigade with the armored breaching force, the 300 vehicles of all sorts, were to push down this hill. And actually, the Cameronians of the 46th Brigade were a little bit in the hamlet in front of us, but that doesn't really matter to be on that exact spot. But 44th Brigade from this point was meant to start their attack on the Siegfried Line at 9 o'clock on the 8th, 9 o'clock in the evening on the 8th of February 1945. But because of the weather, because of the fighting, because of the mud, because of the mine, at 9 o'clock in the evening, the armored breaching force was still back in Nijmegen. And they still had to, they even had to start their advance yet towards the forming up point.
Wow.
So as they are moving forward, you know, they're getting stuck in the mud, they're getting into, you know, bogged down traffic, they're getting all sorts of problems. They even, as part of them, even do a slight detour, and it's not until well after midnight that part of the armored breaching force, basically just the 6th Battalion, the Kingsland Scottish Borderers, instead of all 3 battalions, only 1 battalion, the Kingsland Scottish Borderers, 6th Battalion, is coming to this area with part of the breaching force. Now they wait. But at 4 o'clock in the morning of the 9th of February 1945, they can't wait anymore for the others to come up because they're still not there. They're still struggling to come forward. And they have to start pushing. Why? Because the longer they wait, the more chance there is that the Germans will bring up reinforcements towards Cleves and towards the high grounds southwest of Cleves. Southwest of Cleves. Which means that the operation would cave in, and you know the entire advance would grind to a halt. So the Kingsland Scottish Borderers, together with the specialized armor, they started attacking the main Siegfried Line with the armored breaching force, and they basically start rolling down this hill. Obviously, again supported by artillery. Infantry riding, not on foot, but riding in those kangaroos to give them as much support as possible, and trying to just smash through the German Siegfried Line here. Now, the main thing they had to worry about in this area was a sizable anti-tank ditch that has been there already, partly since September 1944, but has been widened and lengthened. It still wasn't completely finished at this time, but it did offer proper protection for the Germans. And I think I also sent you, Paul, a aerial picture of that area. Yes, that's it. So basically, on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see where the forest is taking a left-hand turn just at that corner there. This is basically where Joris is. He's walking basically down the road to the right towards that anti-tank ditch, and you can clearly on the right-hand side see that anti-tank ditch, you know, zigzagging a little bit down, yeah. But you can also see a lot of trenches and fighting positions. Of course, the houses in this area also have been fortified by the Germans, but it's also a lot of trenches systems. So again, we're looking at a World War One kind of situation. This is not World War Two, Paul. This is World War One. What we're looking at. It's quite incredible to see such pictures on the Western Front, you know, in 1945, in my opinion. But still, it's there. As the Germans are pushing through. Now, on that aerial picture, I encircled two places. If you just go back there once again, please. Yeah, I encircled two places. Those are the two areas. There were three areas where the British crossed, where the King's or Scottish border is crossed, and these are just two of those areas, which are on this picture. The third one is a little bit further to the north. You can't see it on this picture. So the southern one, it was covered by a scissor bridge, which were brought up by Avery tanks. But the first bridge was dropped short of the entire Siegfried Line. Here you can see splendid, Paul. Here you can actually see a World War II map with all the known German fighting positions in it, and also the anti-tank ditch. But the scissor bridge was dropped a little bit short, so they had to bring in a second one. But when it went into operation, quite quickly, a anti-tank gun that was towed behind a brain carrier or another vehicle got stuck on that bridge. So the southernmost bridge that you could see on that picture was out of commission quite quickly, and the northern part of the bridge was actually bridged by fascines, so big piles of branches that they just dropped into the ditch, then covered it with dirt, and they could just, you know, go across it. And if you would zoom into this is actually a splendid picture, Paul. I really glad that I found that aerial picture, because it's from after the fighting. It also shows you, if you really zoom in that one, we don't need to do it now. But if you really, you can also see the tracks of some vehicles that drove around there, either during the fighting or shortly after. Yeah, it got a lot of interesting information on it. Now, if we would just turn the camera to our Dutch Paul the cameraman again, because Paul should be by this time. Yes, he is actually now at the side where that second bridge, that fascine thingy, actually was, and he is now. Paul, are you pointing towards the Netherlands now? Or are you pointing towards the? I think he is. Yes, he's now pointing west. So he's now pointing into the direction where the British came from. The ditch, you can't see it today, but we know from different research that the ditch was just in front of him, just mere meters. So as Paul is now walking into the field, I hope not the farmer's not coming, showing up with his gun. But as he's walking into this field, in 1945, he would just drop down the ditch about right now, or cross that fascine bridge, that the fascine crossing. And just to Paul's left a little bit. Just to Paul's left a little bit. Is that Paul? Are you now looking west or south, or No, actually, now you're looking east, right? So look south, please, for me, Paul. Yeah, you're just walking parallel to the ditch, just in that house on the left-hand side that you see coming up. This is where the other crossing was made. That was useless in the end.
This is really cool stuff, Edwin, Joris. Paul, Rule, everybody. Amazing stuff.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. And unfortunately, we do not know. You know, just taking this this live show to an end. We almost broadcast it out for 1 hour 45 minutes, Paul. I see.
Yeah.
So it's been a long live stream. I do hope that people appreciate it and like it.
Well, people can go back in and dive into it again later. They can go back and follow it along with maps and things, and it's amazing stuff.
Absolutely, they should do so. And I'm trying to load my voice here now because we're now at the final location. So what we did, because of course, Operation Veritable, it carried on for quite a few days. So the entire operation, including its sequel, Operation Blockbuster, did not end until the 11th of March 1945. And of course, during that fighting, the Germans fought for every yard of ground that they gave. As we just discussed, the Germans were fighting on their homeland, they're fighting on their own soil. And while they could not, and I think most Germans would realize that by now, the Germans could not, absolutely were not capable of stopping the Allied onslaught anymore in early 1945. And certainly also not the big juggernaut that, 1st Canadian Army brought in here, that steamroller. As you
and just, I want to make sure the audience realise we're not at one cemetery now, are we? We're at three.
No. Yes, absolutely. So
just explain where the three cameramen, and yourself, explain where they are.
So what we did is, there's a lot of cemeteries here in this area, and just to, we thought it would be a nice idea to conclude this live show on the first 24 hours of Operation Veritable with just a little bit of footage of some of the cemeteries that are dotted around this landscape. Where I'm right now here is at the Groesbeek Canadian Cemetery, which is just in front of me. And one of the special, so these are just mostly Canadians. There are a few are Brits and Poles. I think even a Russian is here. But most of them are Canadians, and most of them all died during Operation Veritable Blockbuster. There are, of course, also some from later on. But Canadian Army decided after the cessation of hostilities that no Canadian soldier of the Canadian Army, I'm not talking about Air Force, just talking about Army, would be buried perpetually on former enemy soil. So that means that all the Canadians that were killed or died of wounds and were on temporary cemeteries in Germany were exhumed and were brought back to the Netherlands and were reinterred either here or on a different cemetery somewhere else in the Netherlands. But there's still a lot of Canadians here. Also, if you just could switch the camera back to my, please, for a second, because there's something else at this cemetery. That's this building over here, and it's being mirrored over here. And these two buildings, both of them, have all the names of the missing in actions of the British and Commonwealth, so the British and the Canadians practically, since the crossing of the Rhine till the end of the war. And that makes this cemetery also very special. And a lot of these folks, especially if you look here at the Canadians just here, just panning here, a lot of these names here are all Canadians who died during the Rhineland campaign. So this guy, for instance, Private Medare, he was missing in action on the 6th of March 1945, shortly before the end of the campaign here, of the operation here. That's one guy I'm quite familiar with. So I'm here on the Canadian Cemetery. But we also have, I think Mike is on Mook Cemetery.
Yep.
And we have Rue on Millsbake Cemetery. And those are both two cemeteries where predominantly British.
And just a question about in terms of tourism, Edwin, because you're a tour guide like myself. Does this battlefield get many visitors or not really?
We get a fair share of Canadians, but it's still, nothing is like Normandy, Paul.
No.
Normandy is so well known. And Arnhem, I think, and even Arnhem is not Normandy. It's much less. But Veritable, it's still, unfortunately, it's still one of the lesser known battles during World War II by the broad audience. Some people that are really into World War II history, they will have heard about it or even read about it. Some of the Canadians are coming here, especially if they've got some relatives here or they served in those units themselves. But still, it's one of the lesser known battles, and I think it's a shame, because if you look at the importance of this battle, at the size of this battle, it really deserves much more attention than it's been getting up to now.
Well, this is one of the things that's so gratifying. Tim Sampson, who kindly sponsored my Iwo Jima week, an American, just unfamiliar with Operation Veritable. That's the thing. I feel that all this effort is worth it if just one person discovers a battlefield they didn't know before. And if that one person goes and reads a book or gets a bit of information or goes and gets a map out and starts learning, then it's all been worthwhile, because we do have a habit, all of us, of telling the same stories again and again and again. And that this whole World War II TV thing for me is the last year I've talked about way more different battles than I would normally do in a normal year, where I would be going to Point to Rock 100 times.
Yeah, I know. I watch a lot of the episodes on your channel, mate. So, and I have to say, I just love it. I'm also absolutely thrilled to hear about different battles, and some of those, are also places that I can't come. So, for instance, you did something on Guadalcanal.
Yeah, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, Hong Kong, Stalingrad.
And for us Europeans, it's really difficult to get there. Iwo Jima, it's even physically impossible, because you either have to be Japanese or an American.
One day a year if you're American, until it gets stopped. No, I mean, we will bring things to an end. I think we'll try and bring it in under 2 hours. I think if at some point I'd like all of the camera people to put it back on selfie mode, so we can say thank you to you all for what you've done there, and I'm so glad that you decide to finish at cemeteries, because it's the absolutely perfect way and the fitting way to end something like this. And we, as you said yourself, Edwin, we haven't covered the entire operation. How could you, with a division, 5 divisions on attacking and a battle that lasts over a month? You can't do it all. But there are the guys, Edwin. So I'll put it on. We should all be there now. So there is the team of Dutch. Edwin's team, Joris's team. It has been extraordinary work. It's a privilege to work with you. Your dedication to going out there and doing this, and I say not just today, but also the preparation for it. And Edwin doing it all like that, controlling the cameras, doing it in your second language. It's amazing stuff. So, thank you very much. If people want information about where these cemeteries are, I will probably do a tweet about it later on. I'll ask Edwin to send me some stuff. Between us, we'll do a list of some of the locations we went to, so people can check these things out and go there. But it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it, guys. Thank you, fantastic team. In terms of what we've got coming up on World War II TV, I've actually got 4 days off. When we start up again with Normandy historiography, and then Burma week starts very soon. But I've got a few days off. I'm actually going to go to the beach tomorrow, and I'm not going to talk about war for an hour or two, maybe. So anyway, thank you very much, guys. Edwin, superb. It's a privilege working with you all. And again, I can only thank you so much for doing this. You've brought a battle that should be known more. a bit more to the forefront here, and I hope people go back and watch this video later on. Some people are out during Saturday afternoon. So any final words to finish off, Edwin?
I think I speak for our entire team that, you know, it's been a privilege to be able to do this today with you, Paul, as it always is a privilege and a lot of fun. And yeah, you know, and every time I'm here on this cemetery, I come here quite a lot, and also the others come here quite a lot. You know, it keeps reminding us of, you know, that we should be grateful that we have today what we have today in terms of, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, even though it's restricted due to COVID. You know, that'll pass. But, you know, the world would have been a different place if not for these men. So I think
absolutely
that's
a perfect way to finish it, Edwin. So I will put it on my feed to say goodbye. So, well, there we are, folks. That was extraordinary. 2 hours of absolutely novel way of bringing the battlefields to people's home. I know sometimes it's a little bit clunky. The audio isn't perfect. We're not there. We're all doing this because we want to do it. And, you know, it's incredible to be able to bring 6 camera feeds to you from Netherlands and Germany. It's extraordinary. So thank you very much, everybody. This is Paul Woodadge for World War II TV saying I will see you all again. Don't forget, check out the links. Check out Joris's touring company, Edwin's touring company. The links below. Check them out on Twitter and Facebook. They both do lots of work. Joris has his own YouTube channel. Edwin does amazing work. There's lots of things you can do to get involved with what they do out there in that part of Europe. As for me, I'm going to go and watch some football now. World War II to football. Perfect. So thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you all again very shortly.